The image that you are now seeing, America the Beautiful, is a book written by Dr.Ben Cason, the top neurosurgeon in this world. Subtitle, Rediscovering What Made This Nation Great. Today we'll talk about black men. They could be heroes. All the while, blacks were experiencing various degrees of success as craftsmen, farmers, business proprietors, and even as founders of towns in the South and Southwest. A growing number of intellectuals in the North were shaping agendas that eventually would redirect the attention of the masses. More formally educated than most blacks and eager to enjoy life's comforts, their driving ambition centered primarily around the trappings of success. In the 1850s, abolitionist Martin Delany described freed blacks who yearned for prestigious occupations. He exhorted them first to emulate others who understood the necessity of educating their children to do everyday practical business. Such people were wise, said Delany, because they were willing to take one step at a time. Living in a period prior to the imposition of severe legal restrictions on the black enterprise, Delany intoned, "This has been one of our great mistakes. We have gone in advance of ourselves. We have commenced at the superstructure of the building instead of the foundation, at the top instead of the bottom. We should first be mechanics and common tradesmen, and professions as a matter of course will grow out of the wealth made thereby." But the black elites were to take their lead from a band of white liberals and other black scholars and pedants, led principally by W.E.B. Du Bois, a man who by 1890 had achieved a doctorate from Harvard University. He was to play a major role in attempts to undermine Tuskegee's outstanding success with the poorest blacks. A highbrow snob, Du Bois dismissed as unworthy the labor of craftsmen, farmers, and business owners. In his zeal to drag all blacks through his beloved halls of ivy, he talked of turning carpenters into men, for, in that peculiar world into which he had assimilated, one who labored or was bereft of a college degree could hardly be considered a man. It is this pretentious spirit that was to become the hallmark of the black elite, whose overriding influence would shape the thinking and behavior of future generations of blacks. Among blacks, the undiluted pretentiousness of this elite was legendary and had already become the stuff of human ridicule, long before it was incisively chronicled in the 1940s and 1950s by the black sociologist E. Franklin Frazier. From earliest times, it is members of this elite, more concerned with the image and immediate gratification than with the task of building, who have sent forth signals that have contributed to the undermining work ethic among the poor. Such signals are still sent forth today. Zealous in their own desires to avoid the prospect of menial labor, they encourage the poor to disdain dead-end jobs and to hold out for meaningful work. On a practical level, the unemployed poor also play important roles as symbols. Held as hostages in the war against the system, they can be publicly displayed as more victims of racism, a situation best dealt with by devising more and more social programs. The message of the elite has taken firm root in the culture of the poor. In an 1989 interview, George Waters, director of EDTEC, an organization in Camden, New Jersey, that teaches entrepreneurial skills to youth, described the greatest obstacle to youngster success as attitude. Attitude, Waters said. "We're up against bad, unproductive attitudes toward work, which have been instilled into these youngsters, not only by their peers on the streets, but also by parents who actually tell their kids that working for fast food wages is beneath them. There are adults who actually pass such notions on to kids. In another era, before the corrupt views of the elite achieved dominance, the humblest blacks believed that what economist Tall Saul teaches, that there is no such thing as a dead-end job, that it is up to the individual to turn every work experience into a chance to either learn skills or improve work habits, or position oneself for achieving still higher goals." In interviews, members of today's black elite made clear that even little mom and pop ventures ought to be avoided, since they are not viable businesses that can produce the high incomes to which they would like to become accustomed. Busy as members of this class are with trying to break through those glass ceilings in white corporations in their quest for higher level positions, they cannot summon the concern to help those on the lowest rungs find economic means to create these small enterprises. A publication from a Washington, D.C. black think tank, well, not black think tank, a black Washington, D.C. think tank, offers a brief historical survey of American black business. and then condescendingly dismisses the many small businesses that were formed. The article laments that the blacks who were lured into the world of business in the 1920s were typical, not the ones who were highly educated, and goes on to imply that since such businesses were not created by more affluent and did not grow beyond a limited size, they were hardly worth noting. Get it? Those thousands of black-owned businesses that were created by the humblest people and had sustained families and employed children were not the viable kind that would be acceptable to the needs of the better classes. Sociologist Nathan Hare writes, members of the black middle class essentially occupy a parasitic relationship to the black underclass. Consumed primarily with a quest for recognition and validation, they derive satisfaction only to the degree that the white world grants them here a news anchor job, their distributorship. Television journalist Tony Brown, in his syndicated column, regularly berates members of this class for neglecting to take up their responsibility to lead with their money instead of with rhetoric and bluster. He views their indifference as the true waste in the black community. Brown claims that the only role played by the middle class is as managers of resources allocated by government and corporate programs. They are, in effect, overseers of the bounty. He charges them with acknowledging a connection to the race in order to pick up their affirmative action paychecks. A disproportionate number of these elites shamelessly earn their livings directly off the adversities of the poor. Are black men shooting one another down in the streets and filling up the prisons across the land? Are black teens irresponsibly producing babies in addition to menacing society? Members of the middle class view such tragedy as opportunities for personal advancement. For every demonstration of pathology offers the chance to submit proposals for yet newer and trendier social programs that will, of course, require the input of the elites, wise, and judicious expertise. Black social problems offer unlimited fodder for workshop topics and themes for the endless string of conferences funded by Philip Morris or Anheuser-Busch and hosted by the growing number of black social scientists and talk circuit writers. As has been pointed out in several candid works by blacks, an adherence to socialist principles has proven a comfortable cop-out for a great many black men, providing a rationale for the ongoing expression of anger at the white man system and alibis for not becoming active economic competitors. The fear of failure has made many fall prey to the seduction of the political left. Nathan Hare, in The Endangered Black Family, discusses the tension that such defenses create, claiming that at the heart of the discord between many black men and women is the woman's suspicion that the black man's chant against the white man is but an unconscious evasion, an empty, quixotic excuse for his own incompetence and reluctance to contend in the marketplace. Hare laments the fact that the vitality of this angry man is spent on what he calls the dream scheme complex, a mental fantasy land that prevents him from dedicating his energies to the necessary day-to-day endeavors in the mundane world. Eventually scorned by others for the escapist route he has chosen, his defensive posturing only increases in such a way as to externalize every portion of the responsibility for his fate away from himself. One could call it blasphemous, almost to a man. These militants pay homage to Marcus Garvey, making claim to his strong nationalist teachings. Every year they come together on his birthday and other occasions to celebrate their patron saint. Yet there was no greater advocate of capitalism than Garvey. Not only did he show blacks, by example, how to access the economic system, he taught that capitalism was the best route to prosperity for the little man. He abhorred all forms of collectivist schemes, claiming that communism robs the individual of his personal initiative and ambition or the result thereof. Not for Garvey the depiction of poverty as a morally superior state or condition. On the contrary, he indicated that a man who remained poor was evidence of someone who had failed to make the most of his abilities and the world's opportunities. The nationalism of yesterday's militant or today's Afrocentrist is without focus or base. Garvey's brand of nationalism had an economic mooring, a purpose and rationale, and it gave his followers constructive goals toward which to work. Garveyites were to be up and doing, they were to be achievers. Those black men of that earlier period of our history who took the lead in entrepreneurial activities were looked upon as the natural authority figures in our communities, held in regard by their peers and respected by the young. They were driven by the same natural urges so well described in George Gilder's book, Men in Marriage, and in an understanding of father, of there was said, masculine responsibility. As historical fact and as common sense, it was once accepted wisdom that the major reason for the institution of marriage, which assures a man's union to a woman, was to help put brakes on men's aggressiveness, to turn their focus away from intemperate self-indulgence toward more responsible behavior. Gilder claims that when normal socializing restraints are no longer in place and a social institution deny the basic terms of male nature, masculinity makes men enemies of family and society. And where a welfare bureaucracy has entirely replaced their economic function, men are even less likely to play positive roles in the ongoing sustenance of communities. As is clear from the study of all groups, as well as those earlier segregated black communities, where married men function as husbands and fathers, it is they who set the tone and influence the nature of the community. Among blacks, where almost 60% of men are single rolling stones, it is they who set the tone in ghetto neighborhoods.